Hello and welcome back. I'm really excited for today's discussion or episode. It's definitely about something that I've been rumbling with lately, and I know my clients rumble with, and I'm just so excited to share. And it's something that I've been sitting with a lot lately, just really thinking about why, when we start to pick apart our body, it just becomes this snowball of finding everything that's wrong with your body. Like when you're looking in the mirror and you see something about your stomach that you don't like, and then next you're picking apart your legs, and then it's your arms and you're looking at your back, and then you're picking your skin apart, and then 2 minutes later you're so close to the mirror you're almost touching it, like picking at your skin. And it's just so interesting how it's like one thing trips it, and then you're just finding everything that's wrong with your body and picking everything apart. And it's like, why does one negative thought become 20 negative thoughts around your body? Maybe you've noticed this too. And I've noticed something really interesting for myself over the years, and that's that when I find myself picking my body apart, it's usually when there's something else going on in my life, something else stressful, some area of my life where it feels like it's imploding, or some relationship that's kind of going haywire, or I had a negative discussion or whatever. Basically, it's like those moments where I find myself picking my body apart are often when there's other things that feel out of control in my life. Last week, for example, was when I was really rumbling with this, and that's when I kind of had this idea for this discussion inside this Substack. And we had a crazy week. We are building our house by ourselves, which has been such a great experience so far, but we were planning to pour concrete and had to move it up in the week because there was rain coming in. So we were kind of racing the rain and had to scramble to get stuff ready to go. And it just so happened that on the exact same day that we were pouring concrete, I was running my first ever workshop inside of my group coaching program, or inside of my private coaching program. And it's so interesting because it was so much in one week. Meanwhile, I have another project that I'm working on that was demanding a lot of attention. And the night before we poured concrete was when I was in a tailspin about my body, picking everything apart, thinking about the zit that was on my back and how my back looks, how my arms look, all of these things, right? The whole snowball that we've all been a part of. And because I've seen this pattern in my life, I catch it and I say like, oh, isn't that interesting? You're picking your body apart. What might this actually be about? And in this case, it was very much about the high level of stress and the overwhelm that was going on that week. Just everything felt like it was crazy. I was tired. I was just absolutely exhausted and running on fumes. And so suddenly it was like I was criticizing every part of my body, everything that I could find wrong. And I knew that my body was not the problem. I know that this is just where stress often lands for me, where overwhelm often lands for me, is like it shows up as me picking my body apart. And I know this to be the case for so many women that I work with as well. And I think it's so interesting that oftentimes there's something much deeper going on here. When a client comes to me and she is picking her body apart, spiraling about her body, I often let her go, ask questions, let her just unravel everything that's going on. And then I ask her, like, what would happen if you stopped thinking about your body and you actually got into your body? And the first time I ask this, she typically has no idea what I'm talking about and pauses and is quite confused. But then we dig into it and I talk to her about, like, everything you're describing is as though you are just judging your body. You are finding all the things that are wrong with your body. You're picking it apart from the outside. What would happen if you got into your body? If you felt what it was like to be in your body, to experience your body? Most people don't know how to answer that question because so many of us spend so much time practicing criticizing and analyzing our body and trying to optimize our body, right? Now, look, what do I mean when I say get into your body? What I mean is sit down for some breath work and feel what it's like to feel the air moving up and down, moving in your lungs and out of your lungs. What is it like in your nose when you first take in a big, deep breath? What does that feel like? What does it feel like in your throat? What if you went for a hike and you felt the wind on your face, the breeze in your hair, the ground on your feet, underneath your shoes, obviously? What would it feel like if you felt the brisk air on your arms? Like really paying attention to that stuff. Even something like listening to the sound of the birds chirping. Another way I talk about getting into your body is through exercise. What if you just went and moved your body and paid attention to what it feels like to dance? What it feels like to feel your feet on the ground? What it feels like for your body to feel exhausted, your muscles to feel fatigued? What about if you went and danced in the kitchen and just let your body flow, or laughed and really felt what it felt like in your belly to laugh with your friends or your loved ones? That's what I mean when I'm saying getting into your body. Because oftentimes when we get into our body, we feel what it's like to be in experience with our body, rather than like this exterior thing that is just thinking about our body being the problem and picking it apart. When we get into it, it allows us to be present, to experience it, to be thankful for it, rather than criticizing it, right? It just totally changes our perspective and allows us to experience our body rather than just evaluate it. And then I like to zoom out even more, because so many of us hyperfixate on all the problems with our body and all the problems in our life. And oftentimes what I like to ask here is like, what if instead of focusing on fixing our body, we focused on getting into our life? And what I mean by that is training for a big event, a big athletic endeavor that we love, going camping, spending time laughing with our friends around a campfire, hiking a mountain. Maybe it's building a business, spending time with your kids, like going swimming with your kids in the lake when you've resisted putting on a swimsuit for so long. Like getting into your life, getting in the garden and just being in the garden, working and weeding and trimming and being in your life more. And what I notice happens with this is there's less time to focus on the things that are wrong with our body. It cuts out the noise, right? Because we're experiencing more things in our life to talk about and to focus our energy on. And I've noticed when our life feels more full, there's less time to hyperfixate on the problems that are wrong with our body and the problems in our life too. So many of us get stuck in this hamster wheel of, complaining about a relationship with a coworker that is challenging. And so we think about it all day. We come home and we complain about it all evening to our spouse. Or we have a blow up with our spouse and then we ruminate on it. Or we have a frustrating relationship with our mom, and so we spin out about it constantly. And oftentimes people have these same sort of thoughts with their body, where just every time they look in the mirror, every time they eat something, every time they sit at their desk, every time they put on a new outfit, every time they get home from work, it's just they're ruminating on this. For some people, it's a to-do list. They hyperfixate on this to-do list, and that's just them. They're living their life through this to-do list. And it's just the same thing over and over is the point. We spend so much time trying to process it that we actually end up just replaying it in our minds and kind of making it worse by just adding fuel to it. And it kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy because we're looking for more evidence of that very thing, right? And so I don't know if you've experienced this too, but sometimes talking can be helpful, and other times it just makes us keep reliving the same experience and keeps the story alive. Meanwhile, if we can get into our life, it helps remove that charge that we give some of those things, those other things that I was just describing that we often fixate on. We get into our life and we have new experiences to talk about. It shifts our hormones and our nervous system and the endorphins that we experience. It gives us other experiences to talk about and have with people that we love. And it reminds us how small some of these problems are that we have in our life. It gets us into our body and living our life rather than hyperfixating on problems. And in other videos, I've talked about what happens when we focus and fixate on things. So if you haven't watched those, please follow along and we can revisit them again. But this fear and focus loop is definitely something that contributes to our problems even more. So I want to offer you something, and that's just that maybe when we can actually get into our bodies and get into our lives, it can help us move out of these problems that constantly just keep revisiting or keep coming up for us. Maybe it helps us soften the symptoms that we're experiencing in our body, get out of this focus on all of the problems that we're having in our life. It shifts our perspective entirely and helps us not focus on our body being the problem, on these relationships being the problem, but rather it helps us see that life is so much bigger than all of those things, and we can just experience life for what it is and appreciate our body for what it is. I have a couple of questions that I want to offer you that are totally worth exploring. What brings life to your life? What makes your life feel full and vibrant and alive? What do you like to do that helps you to kind of forget about your body and just be in that thing that you're doing? For me, it's biking. I love biking. When do you feel most like yourself? How can you do more of that thing? What do you like to do that just makes time disappear? When you can be so present in that thing that time passes quickly. Where are you giving energy that doesn't deserve so much energy? Is it a relationship with a coworker? A fight that you had with your spouse? Something about your body that you're fixating on, that you don't want to give so much energy? And I want to ask you one challenging question that may possibly change your life. And that is, what would happen if you spent this summer chasing an experience rather than trying to just find a different body, rather than chasing a different body? I think taking inventory of our life is really helpful, right? What's nourishing and what's depleting? What's taking away from our life versus what's giving to our life? What stories are you telling yourself about your body, about your life? I think all of this stuff is really helpful, but I think sometimes we can spend so much time optimizing and analyzing that we forget to just be in our life. And sometimes all of this time that we spend optimizing and analyzing perpetuates these problems and these health symptoms and these struggles that we have in our life even more. And when we can get into our life, like I said, it moves our nervous system into rest and relaxation. It shifts our hormones. It helps us feel these better endorphins in our mind that make us feel better in our life. So if you're hoping for a different experience in your life, if you're wishing you had a different relationship with your body and you're constantly trying to fix your body, I invite you to consider what it would look like to get into your body and experience your body rather than thinking about your body. I invite you to get into your life and experiencing your life rather than just thinking about your life from a 10,000 foot view all the time. Maybe what you're waiting for isn't on the other side of fixing your body. It's actually on the other side of experiencing your life and experiencing your body. And if I would love to hear what brings more life to your life. I would love to hear what's coming to mind for you. And if you could just do one thing this week that brought more life to your life, what would it be? If you could do one thing this week that helped you get into the experience of your body, what it felt like to be in your body, what would that one thing be? I would love for you to share. And again, if you haven't watched my video about the fear and focus and fixating, please go back and watch that. It's a really good one and it ties in really well to this. Thanks for watching.